a lot of feelings of failure, and even though I would provide the advice that fed is best, and I believe that to my core, I wanted what was quote unquote best for my baby, and I didn't feel like that I could give that to him, which did not feel great.
Before we begin, I want to share something special with all of you expecting parents out there. As an internationally board certified lactation consultant, I've seen firsthand how a little planning can go a long way to helping you achieve your baby feeding goals. That's why I'm offering you my free ebook. It's called Birth Practices to Support Breastfeeding, and it's a workbook. So check out the link in the description below. Hi, welcome back to Lo's Lactation Lab. This week, you're going to hear from Dominique. She is both somebody who is a mom who has gone through the struggles of feeding a baby and somebody who offers her expertise as a registered dietitian to people in the postpartum period. So you are going to hear both of those in 2 separate episodes. Today, we're really focusing on her personal story. And we'll discuss in this episode this idea that we should love every second of body feeding, of breastfeeding our babies, of providing our milk to them. And the reality is that sometimes it feels more like a grind than something that we enjoy. But for many of us, for many of you, you have chosen to keep doing it because of the fulfillment you received. And that's whether or not you exclusively body fed, or you exclusively pumped, or you did some sort of combo of pumping, body feeding, formula. We can still find fulfillment in this primal task of caring for our babies, no matter how we end up doing it, and no matter how closely it matches what we pictured before we're in the situation. So tune in to hear both the triumphs and the struggles that Dominique faced while feeding her baby. Hi, Dominique. Welcome.
Hi, Lo. How are you?
I'm so good. And I'm so happy to see you again. You have helped me in so many ways, and we'll get into that. But before we do, I would love for you to just introduce yourself and give as much or as little information as feels right for you.
Yeah, so I'm a registered dietitian. I practice from a anti-diet, intuitive eating approach through Happy Valley Nutrition, and I see folks of all kinds, children included. And I'm a mother and a
Mhm.
partner, and I have a lovely dog, and love gardening, reading, all that good stuff. Pottery, very
Mhm.
artsy.
Yeah.
And I like fashion, which I'm sure we'll chat about a little bit later. And yeah, the outdoors, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to be talking about 2 separate things. We're going to tap into your expertise as a registered dietitian and somebody who loves fashion as well. But before that, we are going to talk about your personal experience with baby feeding. So, what I would like to do is take you back to some of your kind of earliest memories as a child and think about, have you describe what your exposure to baby feeding was culturally in your home and in your community?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think food was a really big love language, generationally from my grandparents down to my parents, you know. Food definitely was a way my grandmother showed my father love, and food was scarce in my mother's household. She grew up in poverty, so that was a big way of showing love in my household, and it was very freely given. And yeah, we love food.
Awesome. Okay. And so when we talk about babies in particular, did you mostly see bottle feeding, or did you see breastfeeding? Did you see a combo as you were kind of growing up from early childhood all the way through your teens and into adulthood? What were you
Yeah,
exposed to?
I almost never noticed one way or the other. I think
Mhm.
I never registered. I think I just viewed both as normal and saw both in my personal life, my extended family, some sister-in-laws I've had that have breastfed openly,
Mhm.
and then I would never stop to think twice about a mother feeding with a bottle either. So,
Mhm.
personally was breastfed, I think up until around 9 months, at which point I started to just refuse breastfeeding.
Uh-huh.
My mom says started to refuse after she went on a trip, and I was angry at her. Who knows if that how true that was or what. But, breastfeeding was part of my journey and also formula feeding. So and
Mhm.
also my
Yeah, okay. That's good. I always like to dig into that cultural piece a little bit because one of the reasons breastfeeding is so hard now is because many of us just have so little exposure. And often the first time we ever have seen a baby on a breast up close and personal is when we're feeding our own babies.
Oh, it's certainly much more up close and personal.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas in generations past, people would have lived more communally and would have seen each other feeding babies from very early ages. Um,
Right.
but we just live such separate lives now. And so many people consider breastfeeding so private that we don't get the early exposure that we would
Absolutely.
have beforehand. Did you play with baby dolls?
Loved it. Loved all
Uh-huh.
of that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And
Mm.
did you use bottles?
Yeah. Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
I had the one that was orange juice and milk
Yeah,
and,
I've
you
had to
know
bring that up multiple times.
Yes, yes, absolutely, and I loved dolls even into middle school. American Girl
Uh-huh,
doll was a part of my generation, and,
uh-huh.
I loved it. So that was, yeah, always a big part of my childhood.
Okay. So then when you were, expecting, what were you thinking when it came to baby feeding? How did you decide you were going to approach that once it came?
It's a great question, and being a dietitian, I do know some of the health benefits of breast milk, absolutely. And my goal was to breastfeed just per the guidelines up to a year, being my personal goal. I know that varies. Some people go longer than that, and that's great for them, and others, like me, to turn out have to cut it short for other reasons. And yeah, so my goal initially was I thought that I would go a year and see how
Mhm.
it went.
Yeah, and did you, take any classes or read any books or attend any groups, during the, prenatal period?
Great question. Not regarding breastfeeding during the postnatal period or while I was pregnant. I did see a lactation consultant once while I was postpartum. It was part of my birth center, which was awesome. It was a really collaborative birth center. But beyond that, I did not seek outside support.
Okay. All right. And so then let's go right into how it went for you starting at the beginning. You gave birth at a freestanding birth center.
Yes, the
Okay.
only one in Massachusetts.
Okay. All right. And were did things go mostly according to plan? Were you able to begin feeding pretty quickly? How would those first moments?
Thankfully, yes. Very natural, very instinctive. He took to it very well, and we did not have a problem.
Mhm. Okay. And so you
Yeah.
didn't experience any like pain initially or um
Truthfully, not as much as I think other women do.
mhm.
Certainly some discomfort. I would say discomfort. At times pain, but not to a high degree.
Okay. And did you feel like you got enough help in that initial postpartum period to really feel kind of confident in learning this new skill?
Yeah, I had that lactation consultant from the birth center at my disposal, which is amazing. I could, offer a session anytime, but I didn't feel like we necessarily had to, especially starting out.
Okay. So then you had this initial period at the birth center, typically you get booted out pretty quickly from a birth center, right?
That's the goal if everything is going well and smoothly and everyone's healthy and everything is going well. So we did leave 6 hours later after he
Okay.
was born.
Okay. And what did you feel about that transition? Did it feel like it was easy to do? Did you wish you had more time? What
I was happy to be home,
Uh-huh.
the most comfortable space I could imagine,
Mhm.
and, I showered, I dressed into fresh clothing, and we had family time, and I was
Mhm.
ready.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to kind of focus on those first few days at home for a minute because one of the things that I see in settings where there is a lot more hands-on support, so hospitals typically, is the stress gets perpetuated the more people come in and check and, wake up the baby and start giving feeding advice and asking, what's the last time when's the last time they ate? Was it one side or two sides? And, you know, really being very hands-on about providing support super frequently. I have seen people's stress start to ramp up, whereas
This was hands off.
right. Often I hear once you're if you can have the time to just focus on your baby and getting to know your baby without a lot of outside interference, your confidence with the skill building of feeding your baby can increase a little bit more rapidly. Whereas if there's an extended stay, it's almost like you get you kind of receive crutches that are hard to take away from you.
Sure. Yeah, I
What
could
was your experience? Did you feel confident in your early parenting, or did you feel like you had a lot of questions you wish you could ask people?
I actually felt really confident.
Mhm.
I'll say I felt really confident. We didn't really have trouble with latching or positioning. I was able to find reasonably comfortable positions for myself and him that
Mhm.
worked. Um, and I fed on demand as I saw his cues. That was one thing I guess I researched or knew already.
Mhm.
Um, hunger cues, early hunger cues, late hunger cues in newborns. So, fed on demand. And we at night, had a bedside bassinet with a zip down kind of opening. And that was the beginning. Yeah. Kind of a day waking up a lot throughout the night. But I also felt like I fell asleep very quickly afterwards, to be honest.
Mhm.
Surprised by because it's not always my experience.
Yeah, yeah, those sleepy hormones that are in the breast milk help, right?
Yeah.
Help both
Awesome.
mom and
Amazing.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like if you were in a different setting, that more doubt might have creeped in if people were constantly questioning you? Or, do you think the confidence was there regardless?
That's a great question. I think as a healthcare provider myself and as somebody who helps advise my clients to advocate for themselves in medical settings, I think that I would hope that I would
Mhm,
feel I would be able to advocate for myself to say no, thank you
uh-huh,
to unwanted help or assistance. But who knows if that would be the case in the moment. I think I would only know in the moment and
mhm.
potentially could have impacted my experience.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have any major concerns initially? Like, were you worried about a sleepy baby, or did you experience a lot of engorgement, or were there any weight gain difficulties initially?
Truthfully, no. No, not
Awesome.
initially.
Yeah.
Nope.
And
Yep.
how long do you feel like that lasted, where it was, like, smooth sailing?
A solid 5 months.
Wow. Okay.
I would say a solid 5 months for us.
Yeah, and what did anything happen at 5 months that kind of changed things for you?
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Okay. Alright, let's get into that then.
Yeah, so my partner, had a job, no longer has currently, but had, a job that required work travel
Mhm.
for a period of extended time, months at a time,
Mm.
and 5 months was when he had to leave us, and I
Mm,
was put into a solo parenting household position, and,
mm,
those responsibilities went up for me. My support went down, my sleep went down, and, you know, pumping well, I also still was working,
mm.
part-time, but still working. So there were periods I was away from him and there was a nanny caring for him, and I was just barely pumping enough to
Mm,
cover that time away. And it became extremely stressful.
yeah. Did you, before he left, you had already started working, is that right? What time did you go back to work?
Actually 2 months in, and sounds early, but because of the nature of the practice I work at, Happy Valley Nutrition, we have a really flexible and just open work culture. And so I was able to take on clients one by one as I felt capable. And I started very slow and steady.
Okay, okay. And so when you first started, you weren't doing as much pumping because it was very
And
strategic.
I work from only home.
Mhm.
Um, which, him also being home either with, my partner or the nanny, I was able to breastfeed if needed, potentially between clients or what.
Mhm. Okay, okay. So then at 5 months, partner leaves, and
Yeah.
was your plan to continue feeding how you had been, and then you kinda got thrown off by how hard it was to solo parent? Is that kinda how it worked out?
The stress in and of itself, I think, would have done this in it alone.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, that just simply the dynamics of myself also starting to go back into the office one day a week.
Mhm.
How I was pumping, I was just not producing as much, per
Mm.
pump, and ultimately, my son's growth chart started to dip more than the pediatrician was comfortable with or that I was comfortable with as
Mhm.
a provider myself, and so, that is when we started combo feeding.
Okay. And what was that like when you first offered something that wasn't your own milk? Was it difficult for you, or did you feel resolved enough at that time that it was like, "Okay, this is just what we have to do?"
It was extremely difficult.
Mhm.
There was a lot of guilt, a lot of feelings of failure,
Mm.
um, and even though I would provide the advice that fed is best, and I believe that to my core, I wanted what was quote unquote best for my baby, and I didn't feel like that I could give that to him, which did not feel great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And was there anybody that you had in your life that you could talk through these feelings that was able to provide the right type of support, not the dismissing or the, you know, just
I'll
naming
be
what you know?
truly only my therapist,
Mhm.
um, is very unique in the fact that she's not only a licensed therapist, but she is also a certified doula. So she has that experience with pregnancy and postpartum and motherhood herself, being a mother. So I have truly kind of had myself a great outlet starting.
And, was this somebody you saw even before you had your baby?
Yes,
Okay.
yep. Actually, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, that is when I decided to seek out a therapist who specialized in, perinatal mental health.
Oh, wow, that is so smart.
I have had my own personal mental health struggles in the past, and I wanted to
Mhm.
be proactive absolutely as I could. Yeah.
Yeah. What a difference to already have that lifeline so that
Yeah.
when you're in the thick of the most difficult struggles in the postpartum period, you're not having to do the legwork to find the right person.
Yes, yes. I think that preparation was really a great decision that I made for myself. I'm happy I
Yeah,
did
and
that. She's still my therapist, so I
uh-huh.
absolutely love.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and so she was able to kind of help you both feel all the feelings you felt about combo feeding and recognize all the ways that you were providing for your baby and, helping with that inner self-talk that we have.
Yeah, yeah. That feeding, solo parenting, you
Mhm.
know, was diagnosed with epilepsy a few very shortly after he left as well. I had a
Mm.
seizure. I wasn't able to drive,
Oh my
which
goodness.
whole 'nother layer of challenge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, and you were still, the solo, parent at that time for an infant.
Yeah, thankfully, I did have, my mom for support, um, but yeah, for the most part, I would say absolutely me, beyond the driving piece. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And was your sleep a big part of, making sure that your epilepsy was, well controlled?
Yeah, so that's actually why my neurologist thinks I had this level of a seizure in the first place.
Because your sleep was so disrupted? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so what did your night times look like up until then? How was that going?
Yeah, at that point, he was really kind of going through a tough point at that 5 to 6 months time, I would say. We were transitioning him from the bassinet to the crib in his room, and transitioning to doing bottle feeding versus breastfeeding all the time. So it was just looking really different. And I would say, just the night wakings were enough to impact the amount of REM sleep I got for a long enough period of time that the outcome was just not great.
Yeah, that's so hard. And so you began the combo feeding around 5 months, and then how did feeding change from there?
Yeah, so, we begun combo feeding and the formula was specified for when I was only away from him, and then I slowly started honestly choosing to provide formula at times, whether it be out of convenience, we were in public and I didn't feel like getting undressed in public, or I hadn't pumped enough, what have you. So, I would say by 7 months, it was exclusively formula.
And was that surprising to you that your supply went down so quickly once you started replacing feeds?
Very much so, yeah,
Yeah.
did continue pumping, and like I said, the production just was not there, and I was staying hydrated. Um, Truthfully, my eating was not probably not adequate
Mm.
for what needed to be produced, just because also I was extremely stressed. My appetite wasn't great. My ability to prepare meals for myself wasn't great. So my overall intake probably was just not adequate.
Yeah. What we eat has a lot less to do with supply than the input-output ratio there, but this happens to so many people where, for whatever reason, they need to combo feed, and then the combo feeding becomes so convenient and so helpful that then supply drops because the baby just is not, or there's not enough milk being removed to signal to the body to make more and more milk, and it becomes a tough choice for people.
It is. It is a hard transition, and, I think also seeing him enjoy the bottles did provide me some sense of peace because he seemed to really enjoy them as well. Not really have much difference in how satisfied he felt afterward or how well he's afterward. So, yeah, I came to a point where I was at peace with that shift.
Yeah, yeah. One of my very first interviews was with a person who, ended up exclusively formula feeding both of her kids due to a variety of factors. And she said that what she learned was, because she had expected to, like, fully breastfeed for years, both of her kids, and that's just not the way her story worked out, but what she realized was that she nurtured her babies in all the same ways that she would've, had she breastfed. She still, fed on cue. She still did a lot of snuggling when they were upset. She baby wore. She was able to still create that same attachment even though babies weren't feeding from her body, and I think for so many people who have to make that transition, they have to come to terms with the fact that, "Oh, yeah, I'm still the primary nurturer of my baby. I'm just nurturing not with my breasts and all these other ways I'm nurturing."
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that was your experience or not. Did you use breastfeeding as a way to kind of, like, calm your child and
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. Definitely, definitely. But overall, I wouldn't say he was an overly frumpy baby naturally,
Mhm.
reasonably easy to calm, um, with like, he has a favorite song and
Oh, mhm.
sweet things and what have you, so, I didn't feel like we struggled there.
Okay, good. Awesome. Well, is there anything else? Do you remember, like, the last time he fed from your body?
I don't remember the actual last time, but I remember the
Mhm.
last I chose to do it on video and video
Mm.
the breastfeeding session, and it is very bittersweet to look back on. Even though overall, I would say I felt like breastfeeding wasn't a source of joy for me
Okay.
necessarily.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was a source of fulfillment and rewarding and bonding,
Yeah.
and, I do love looking back at that.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting to bring up those 2 feelings, joy versus fulfillment. I do think a lot of people expect to feel more joy when they're breastfeeding. We have these images of, like, a blissful mom in the beautiful dress who looks exactly like she did right,
Yeah.
before having her baby, and, for many of us, that's not how it works out. Um, and for some, that lack of joy means we need to transition, and for others, it means, "Okay, I'm getting fulfillment out of this even though it's not bringing me the joy I expected."
Yeah, yeah, great distinction. Yeah, but overall, a good experience and, would go as long as I could, should the next time come around.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal stories. The next time we talk, we're going to dive into body image and how
Right.
people in this early postpartum period and even beyond the early postpartum period can come to terms with what their bodies are like after such a big transition.
Yes, yes. All right, Lo, thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Dominique's story is one that so many of us can relate to, but also has so many of its own unique elements. Beginning to solo parent while her partner was traveling extensively, starting at 5 months, the balance between returning to work, trying to pump enough milk for the baby, and recognizing that it might be time to add in a supplement when pumping is not quite providing enough. So come back next week, and Dominique is going to talk to us about the work that she does in helping people come to terms with their new postpartum bodies after delivering a baby, and how our views of our own bodies can be crafted to be more positive, even without actually ever changing our bodies.